Welcome again. This is Bill Jones from Freedom's Nest, located on recapturefederalism.com. First things first, what I'm going to do with all the rest of my podcast. I, William R. Jones, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, so help me God. I first took that oath in 1965 when I joined the Navy. I've kept that oath since then. I will continue to keep that oath as long as I live. The presentation today probably is the most important presentation I have done or will ever do. It is significantly important, and it's important to every citizen of the United States. Whoever's listening, listen very carefully. This is episode 11, and the title and the topic regarding this is The Biggest American Story Since 1788. Massive treason. Yes, that's what I said, massive treason. I talk about communism all the time, and that's the foreign enemy of the United States and the domestic enemy of the United States. Not the only one, but it is the most significant of the enemies that we have, and we have many enemies. Because we're so great and we're so exceptional, that's why we have enemies. They want to destroy us. The sad part about it, and why I got involved in the depth that I am with this, is back in 1965. I was already an anti-communist. Third generation anti-communist or anti-socialist, by the way. But it bothered me. It bothered me about that foreign and domestic, and the domestic part bothered me. I understood the communism. I had studied through a book already about the Hungarian Revolution in 1956, just a couple years before the point at which I became anti-communist in 1960 or thereabouts. Yeah, we're talking treason. It's been here a long time. It's been building, and it's building to the point now we even have the majority leader of the Senate coming up with an amendment to muzzle and silence Americans. I would suggest he's coming forward with that amendment. I got a name for it already, for that amendment. Why don't we just call it the Communist Amendment? Let me go into the Constitution, because that's where the treason information comes from, in the Constitution, the basis. The founders, they were pretty smart. In Article 3, which is the judicial power, the judicial article, the three branches of government. And by the way, the treason is in all three branches, or for that matter, all four branches. We have the unofficial one, which is so powerful, the Federal Reserve. And I can show you where that's in the Communist Manifesto. Yep, it's all there. They've been working at it for 160 years. They're doing a pretty good job. Article 3, Section 3. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, comma, or in adhering to their enemies, comma, giving them aid and comfort, period. No person shall be convicted of treason unless the testimony of two witnesses to the same covert act or on confession in open court. The Congress shall have the power to declare the punishment of treason, but no attainder of treason shall work corruption of blood or forfeiture except during the life of the person attainted. The punishment, we now have federal statutes for that. 1909, the first statutes came out that we presently have, and they're still on the books. But I will in future podcasts show you where they haven't done it. When I was a member of the United States Navy, there was demonstrations against me. They said, "Oh, that's freedom of speech." There are limitations to the freedom of speech. Freedom of speech does not cover treason, for instance. And demonstrations against the armed forces of the United States is in Title 18, United States Code, Chapter 115. There's several sections regarding the armed forces. I'm not going to go in too deep with that. I have in the past on Title 18, Chapter 115, and I'm going to in the future because it's key. Today I'm just going to dwell on the Constitution and where it talks about the treason we just did, and then we're going to I'm going to talk about a couple other sections in the Constitution, and then we're going to talk about treason in relationship to the Communist Manifesto and other communist documentation. In Article 4, Section 4, talks about states and the importance of the states. The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or of the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. Interesting what the domestic traitors have done, those committing treason against the people of the United States, and that's the government. The government of the United States is still the same government that Lincoln talked about under God. Government of the people, by the people, for the people. But traitors have come in and they've done damage to the states, state constitutions, the basic American human rights within the states. It was set up, and if you read Federalist 51, Madison talks about our government, three branches, state republics, and the Confederation. That's what we are. Madison also talks in Federalist 10. 9 was Alexander Hamilton, and then 10 was Madison, and they both relate to insurrection. And I'll do a little quoting a little bit later regarding Federalist 10. But they've done damage. The traitors have done damage to the states, done damage everywhere in our society, and I'll be talking about that in future podcasts. Madison talks about, and I'll quote this as a paragraph in there, and then there's several paragraphs afterwards. I'm just going to read the one paragraph. A republic, by which I mean government in which the scheme of representation takes place, opens a different prospect. and promises the cure for which we are seeking. Let us examine the points in which it varies from pure democracy, and we shall comprehend both the nature of the cure and the efficacy which it must derive from the union. The two great points of difference between a democracy and a republic are, first, the delegation of the government, in the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. Secondly, the greater number of citizens and the greater sphere of country over which the latter may be extended. I'm not going to read any more, but you can find more information on that in Federalist number 10, which is the subject continued, the Union as a safeguard against domestic faction and insurrection. And if you heard me before, we are in a current insurrection from traitors, people committing treason against our people, our citizens. In the Communist Manifesto, page 39, there's a section, in the section of the draft of a communist confession of faith, you see communism is a religion. And I'll get into that in some future podcast in depth. It's very significant. But they talk about democracy. They have these questions and answers. It's like a catechism. That's how he started it. That's how Engel did it. And then they changed it somewhat when they put it into the Communist Manifesto the following year in 1848. Question 17. What will be your first measure once you have established democracy? Answer. Guaranteeing the subsistence of the proletariat. Guaranteeing the subsistence. Wow, that sounds like minimum wage to me. But anyway, I'll get into that later too. Question 18. How will you do this? Answer. By limiting private property in such a way that it gradually prepares the way for its transformation into social property, e.g. by progressive taxation, limitation of the right of inheritance in favor of the state, etc., etc. By employing workers in national workshops and factories and on national estates, and by educating all children at the expense of the state. You see, they do it by democracy, by democratic rule, which is not the American way. You have to remember, Federalist 51 talks about the Republican principles. Madison talked about that in 10, I just read. We're a republic, a compound republic to be exact. But oh no, the communists want something else and they're working at it. That's treason. On page 53 and 54, 53, in the principles of communism, number 25, what is the attitude to communists to the other political parties of our time? This attitude is different in the different countries. The answer starts. The first paragraph, they talk about England, France, Belgium. The next paragraph, they talk about America, and then after that, in subsequent paragraphs, they talk about Switzerland and then Germany. Big time on Germany, obviously. But in the paragraph on page 54, in America, where a democratic constitution has already been established, the communists must make the common cause with the party which will turn this constitution against the bourgeoisie and use it in the interest of the proletariat, that is, with the agrarian national reformers. And that makes reference to, in their endnotes, number 11, has to do with a reference to the National Reform Association founded during the 1840s by George H. Evans with headquarters in New York City, which had for its motto, vote yourself a farm. Now, You see, they're talking about democratic centralism. They talk about that in the guidelines of the Communist parties, 1921. They talk about this. Democratic Constitution. We don't have a democratic Constitution. We are a republic. But oh, the traitors, you see, those committing the treason, have a transition. They're transitioning and have been for over 100 years to a democratic constitution. Oh, that amendment that I talked about, the Communist Amendment. Yeah, it's just another amendment that they have to destroy America. Treason, treason, treason. Traitors. Going back to Article 3, Section 3, as I've showed you, the relationship, just skim the surface, let me tell you. Just skimming the surface between treason in the Constitution and the Communist Manifesto and other documentation from the Communist in the relationship. I want to go back to the wording in Article 3, Section 3. It talks about a couple of different ways of being treason. And it talks about levying war and actually doing that. That's more of a formal thing. Then there's a comment that says, or, in adhering to their enemies, comma, giving aid and comfort, period. And those two clauses in that sentence, that's what I want to key on right now. So what I want to key on right now, adhering to their enemies. The definition, when used as a verb, adhering, the definition that we should be considering, to be devoted to a political party, cause, religion, etc. Be a follower. And I said, it's all political. You'll see me all the time making reference to biblical, scriptural readings, other readings of the Bible, because communism is a religion. It's a political ideology, in my opinion, a satanic political ideology. What we are going, we are progressing. I've said it in the past, I'll say it again. Progressive means progressing from the federal system of America to communism. Adhering, the traitors are adhering to communist ideology over the Constitution and the American political system, American political ideology. I've already done at least one podcast in relationship to good government and where the basis is for that. That's where the founders found their strength. And we'll continue on in future podcasts. Do many of them. We shall continue.